All right, Coach Litrenta is here. He's a football coach at East Central University. Coach, thanks for being here.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
See, I was worried about saying your last name that whole time. I was saying in my head
You
about
did a good job. You did a good job.
because my last name's Kaczewski, and so I tell guys just say Coach Steve. Don't worry about the Polishness. Don't worry about any of that shit.
Most of the kids will just call me Coach Lit. A lot of this generation now loves to say that. So whatever makes them happy.
Coach Lit. Oh, because they keep saying the terminology the kids have nowadays.
Yeah.
I'm just learning what all that is. Like now, I'm telling kids that's cap, and you're like, you can't say that, and I'm like, why can't I say that? The only one I won't say is bet. I just can't bring myself to say, okay, bet. I'm just like, I'm the guy that says, okay, good.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Or, Coach, I work at a high school. I could go on and on about all the.
Yeah, you got all the lingo.
They have lingo for their vape pens and stuff like that I've learned and all that stuff. And I'm like, oh, no. Like, I don't need to know any of that, but I've figured it out very slowly. Well, Coach, let's talk about you for a second. You know, I thought it was cool. You said you're from Illinois and like Orland Park. I know exactly where that is. We had friends that lived there. So how did it come about that you wanted to coach? Did you know it was going to be college coaching, or did you just kind of fall into it?
I think early on, I knew I wanted to coach. I wanted to be involved in the game. I think I went to high school at St. Lawrence High School. I got finished up there, and I had the opportunity to play at Olivet Nazarene University in Bourbonnais. Yep. And so playing there 4 years, made a lot of great connections, and it was a good time. I enjoyed my time there. And then as soon as my senior year ended, I kind of had that spring to kind of decide, like, hey, if I'm going to do this and jump into it, I got to start to find a way to make connections and just kind of get my foot in the door. And I was lucky enough to get an opportunity that June, as soon as I graduated, like the next month, with Coach Foster at the College of DuPage. He gave me my first opportunity. So it was junior college football, and it's different. It's different than the NCAA. It's different than a lot of other things to jump right into it. He had a successful program. I was able to coach defensive backs there my first year, and it was kind of thrown to the fire with kids of different backgrounds, kids of different circumstances, and it helped me kind of shape the way I coach and the way I build off relationships of getting to know these kids. Very, very talented kids. You have some kids that are really good in the classroom that are really not, and so it helped me kind of get into everything at once, you know. And so I was there not even 9 months, and then that March, through the connections of schools being able to come in and recruit the kids there, I was able to get on the opportunity at the University of South Dakota with Coach Bob Nielsen. And I think I was there for 2 seasons, 16 and 17, which where we had success and went to the second round of the playoffs. But that's kind of where I learned what it actually is to coach and do everything, because I was the only graduate assistant on the defensive side, and we had another one on offense, but it was just us two doing all the work and learning. Every job's a good job. You don't say no, you just do it, and you just find a way to get it done. And so that kind of made me who I am over the course of that. It was kind of a unique situation. My brother was actually playing football there his junior and senior year, so it was a great opportunity, one, for me to get back around family. And it was a really good staff. I look back on it, and that staff is impressive. You got Coach Tifa Bradley, who's the head coach of Missouri Southern, Coach Yelk, who's with the Eagles, Matthew Middleton, who's with the Kansas State. You go down that list, Mark Watson's at Kent State. Those guys all are at the FBS level and are great to continue to pick their brains and learn from, and just have them as friends in the football world. And then as soon as that season was over, didn't know what I was going to do, and had the opportunity to catch on with Coach Al Johnson here in January of 18 when this job opened. And I've been here since January of 2018. Started here as a position coach, as an outside linebackers coach, and kind of just through that we played a COVID spring season. That was my first opportunity as the defensive coordinator here, and then kind of I also had the special teams coordinator role, and so just working my way through here and just climbing up the ladder and just having fun, building relationships, and seeing this place grow, kids grow, me grow here. Ultimately turned into the opportunity that we had after the 22 season, with us having success and everybody kind of getting and going their separate ways, which was fun. And so this leads me to this opportunity now going into year 2, and I couldn't be more proud of this team and the opportunity that we have this year, and kind of my journey is ever changing, and I'm learning, and just like everything going on, you're always changing and evolving as things go on. So that's kind of my journey leading up from leaving school to this moment now in my coaching career.
Well, what a time to be a defense coordinator during COVID times.
Yes,
Like, oh,
yes, that was fun. It was so when that happened, Antonio Finellis, who was here, got the opportunity to go to LSU and then to actually Illinois. He was actually DB coach at Illinois last year.
yeah,
Took over after him, and it was kind of an opportunity for me to be able to make mistakes and not have the pressure or the scrutiny of, hey, this is a real season. Yes, we
right.
played a few games. We got to have the chance to play Tarleton State, which at that point was just moving to FCS. We went in there and beat them, and they were prolific offense, and it was kind of the first thing that everybody saw and was like, oh my gosh, hey, this defense can play, and it was fun. And it allowed me to make mistakes, which it definitely did, and allowed me to learn and grow through that, which then 21 and 22, we kind of picked it up as we went. And then it kind of made me who I am as a coordinator and some of my core values and things that I want to make sure we are as a defense and as a team now.
Yeah. We kind of did the same thing in Illinois. We had that spring year.
Mm-hmm.
Except some of us coached multiple sports, and I coached all three.
Yeah.
So all three were crammed between January and the end of May, and we were all burnt out. But we had to be super simple because we only had 6 games. So we're like, why would we? Let's try some things and see how
Yeah.
it works. But then that fall, we had the most injuries I've ever seen. I've been coaching 15 years. We went through 5 quarterbacks, 3 tight ends, 3 linebackers. I never had the same starting O line.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's when we thought about it. We were like, what did we do wrong? Like, why are these kids getting hurt? And we were like, wait a minute. Maybe it's because they played 2 football seasons within,
Yeah.
8 months, 7 months from each other. And it was ridiculous. And so then we thought we were too complicated. So we scaled it back. Then we're like, but now we don't have enough. Like now we're like, wait a minute. Now we're going too easy. And now, because our head coach took the job in January of 2020 before COVID
Mm-hmm.
hit. So when COVID hits, he's a brand new head coach. So I was like, oh, this sucks for you to be a head coach during COVID. And so now we finally figured it out, I think. But that season pushed us back like 2 seasons. Like it took us 2 years to catch.
Yeah. And you kind of see that. You saw it in the NCAA and probably at your level. Either some teams were able to mature as young teams. Like that's what we were able to do in 18, 19. Yeah. We brought in a class of, I think, 82 one year.
Oh, wow.
We played about 50 freshmen in 2019, our second year here. And so we used COVID to our advantage of maturing our team, working out, having those spring practices, and kind of propelled us into 7-4 in 21 and then 9-3 in 22. So it helped us going into this new college football and just having an older and mature team in 22.
Was Coach Prevost on staff when you were there?
Yes, he was. Yes.
Okay. Great person.
Yes, he's a really good man. He's got a good family. Yes, he was there. That kind of whole staff was together from Western Illinois when they won, and they kind of all shifted to South Dakota, which it was a really good 2 years. I have connections with all those guys still, really good people.
Yeah, you said South Dakota. I said I've only talked to one coach, and he's been on here like 4 or 5 times. He's always like, "Yeah, I'll come on." And him and Coach Rudolph at Ohio University are my 2 guys to go to for Inside Zone. I always was texting them like, "How do I do this? How do I do this?" And then they'll explain it to me, and then I'm like, "Oh, you're being too complicated. How do you dumb it down for me a little bit?" Because because Prevost is super smart when it comes to that stuff, and he runs it similar to Rudolph does anyway at Ohio. So I'm getting 2 different perspectives, but I'm like, you guys are too smart for me. So I stopped asking at one point. I'm like, you guys are this numbering system you're doing. I'm a dumb high school coach. I'm not smart enough to handle this.
I hear you.
So you're kind of a young head coach, I guess, if you want to put it in that terms.
Yeah.
Was there anything that when you took over, like you didn't think it was going to be that way, or were you fully prepared? Like, I already know what this is going to be like. Or was there anything that caught you by surprise when you took it over?
Yeah, I think at any spot, there's going to be things that are going to take you by surprise. Even with a place that I've been for 5 years before that, obviously there's things you know and some things I don't know once you get into the seat. And then just with the whole, how basically you're like a a general manager, a football coach, and everything else in between now. You're not just getting the defensive problems, you're getting the offensive problems and the defensive problems. So now you're
Mhm.
getting all problems, right? You're not just dealing with, 99% of the time just with one side of the staff, you're getting all side of the staff. So
Right.
it was good. I'm glad actually last year went how it went. We didn't have the success that we wanted. It was a learning curve. Obviously, 3-8 is not what you want, but when you look back at it, with kind of the pieces that we had to quickly put together and some of the coaches that we had to quickly put together in a time where there was a lot of uncertainty, and being honest, we lost a lot of close games. I think we lost 3 or 4 one-score games,
Oh
and
wow.
so that gave us the confidence with guys that were, sophomores that were starting for the first time or juniors that were starting for the first time. Was okay if we can get through this and we can learn and we can at least keep these core of guys and bring them back for this 24 year, which we have. We technically didn't have anybody hit the portal that was actually out of their own will, and just bringing back kids and keeping them healthy and having the retention and recruiting well. We did exactly that. So we matured the kids, we got them the experience, and our staff learned too. And more importantly, I learned too. I mean, I think I made the most mistakes. I'm not afraid to say that. I mean, if I'm not, then you're doing something wrong if you can't look at
Mhm.
yourself first. So as a leader, I think that was big time. But yeah, go and look at it from roster management to coaches to dealing with personalities to dealing with all problems. Football becomes a small part of your day at times, and it sometimes it was overwhelming. But now, kind of being a year into this, from probably the end of the year, from November till now, everything is slowed down.
Yeah.
My day is much more easier. Now I'm seeing things a second time, where I'm having the experience to be able to make those decisions. I'm actually getting the opportunity to have time to basically focus on more football. Spring
Mhm.
ball was much more productive. We did things a lot differently. We did our off season differently, and it was also the first full off season and now first full summer with our strength coach. He got here in June last year, so
Okay.
it was kind of you take your style, I'll take my style, and we were still working on separate ends. And then as soon as November hit, we got on the same page. This has been a really good off season for us the last 7 months. Really happy with where we've been. Really happy with the staff too. And so it's ever changing, ever evolving. But yeah, I definitely learned a lot, and I'm thankful for it because it made me a lot better, and it's going to make this team a lot better in the end.
Well, like people sometimes don't want to hear people how they make mistakes, but I do it all the time. If I tell a kid, I'll tell my players I'm the O-line coach, and I'm like, I'll say something and I'll just keep talking. Like, well, coach, you said this, and that's just a small mistake. I'm like, oh, you're
Mhm.
right. Or like, it doesn't look well blocked. I'm like, guys, this is on me. Like, I'll take the blame.
Yeah,
Like, you didn't do anything wrong. It's on me. Or like, whatever it is, practice planning, the game plan, whatever it is.
yeah. And that was kind of unique because I mean, football's coaching football. I don't think I mean, I was just going to make mistakes coaching ball, but that's not even where I look back and I'm like, dang, that's where, because, I enjoy that when you're out there. It's something that's, it becomes second nature and you're fun, you do it with, but it was more so the stuff behind the scenes, planning meetings, doing all those little things, travel for the first time. A lot of my coach,
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, the people that I came here, there was only, now there's zero that have been here, before. I'm the longest guy on staff. Our linebackers coach is the second longest, Coach Odom. He played for me and was a GA. So there's guys that are becoming familiar with this spot too. So there's almost an all-time learning curve, which is fun. And so it gives me the ability to kind of shape this staff and this team the way you want now, going into year two, kind of looking at it as year one, with the reset and everything last year. But it's been fun and you learn from them. But if you don't learn from that, I think that's your biggest mistake.
yeah,
You got to be willing to learn from them, and my staff understands that too. And we talk about that daily in staff meetings and in team meetings, of not making the same mistakes and bringing some of those mistakes up that we made last year that we don't want to make again, when time comes. And so I think it's important to understand what you've done and what you're going to do.
right. And it feels like you're at a place that's going to allow you to do that, which is
Yeah,
awesome.
that was pretty unique. I know last year it was. You can ask family and especially my fiance now. It was stressful at times, right? You got the tag on. You don't know. You think your wins are the ultimate factor in that, some sort of things, but the
Mhm.
way you carry yourself and some things you don't really know, they're looking at. You know what I mean? I think for me it was okay. I got to win games, right? And that's what
Right.
you think when you got a tag. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's different things people are evaluating. I think I carried myself the same way, but there was some stress at times. There were some other things at times, but for them to go through that whole year and then the season ends and then they still have the confidence in me, I think they saw something, and I certainly appreciate that. And that's why I kind of say this is finally year one. You know what I mean? I have my
Right.
staff, I have the team, I have a plan of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and it's comfortable and time slowing down.
Right.
I think that's
Right.
huge. But to know they have that confidence and then we have the backing and support and a vision, I think now everything is calm and you're able to act that out and not be rational or too quick to make a decision because of, oh, I got to do this for a win. Now it's like I got to do this for X, X, and X, and you're looking down the line 2-3 years and making sure you're doing it the right way. That means more to me now when we can make those decisions, not just off for a win in fall. How about we do this for this or graduation or maybe 2 years away or something like that? That's when you're in a good spot.
Right. We're kind of, like I said, we were kind of in the same boat. Like our head coach was already on staff, but then the head coach resigned. He got the job, and some of those coaches stayed, but like I was brand new and another guy was brand new.
Mm-hmm.
The COVID stuff was kind of like a wash because it was hard to install things and do those things. In the fall year, we can't call it a wash, but we kind of did, and then we kind of started to get on track. And then so like we went from 1-6 the spring year, or 1-5, then we went 0-9, 2-7, 6-3. So now we're thinking like, oh, if the core of us varsity coaches and stuff stays intact, and we finally started to do things the way he envisions it, but kind of like what you were saying.
Yeah, you're taking those steps.
Taking those steps, but like even as a whole staff, like taking steps, like I was brand new, working with guys that have already been there.
You got to learn each other. I think that's important. You got to learn each other, and your staff's got to learn each other. And I think you got to give them the autonomy and the empowerment to do so. You got to put them in certain situations, and then you also got to make sure you set certain guidelines. That's what I've learned through all of that.
Well, I'm the line coach. I was crazy. So they're like, who's this crazy asshole coming in here, like yelling, hooping and hollering? And I'm like, hey, I'm just here to help you guys try to be better and win games. But like I was telling you, I've coached at so many high schools. Now working with a new staff is like nothing.
Yeah.
The hardest part is just when they're talking about previous seasons or they're talking about inside jokes. That's the only thing that will make me mad. Like, what are you talking about? But the rest of it, you figure out, like the cohesiveness of it. And then like to learn that you might make each other frustrated, and once in a while it might show a little bit on the field, but then coming back in and correcting it. So like
that's huge, and we've had those conversations, especially me. I mean, if you see me outside of football and something, I'm very mild mannered. I'm not going to put myself in certain situations. I'm not going to be very outspoken, but when it comes to something that I'm passionate about in football, I'm very, very emotional, very heated. And so that last year led to a lot of rash decisions or saying certain things or getting in certain things or disappoint other people. And so now it's like, okay, we can take a step back. And when those things happen, does that need to happen, or can we evaluate it a different way? Now we know each other's personalities. We know how to talk to each other. It's a lot better, and it's more constructive than tearing or deconstructive than it was in the past.
Right. Like I was gonna give an example. Like an example would be like something very stupid. Like I had my O-line in my end zone. Like we're doing our thing, and then for some reason, the OC and the wide receivers were throwing balls towards us, and he got frustrated, saying, "Why are you down here?" And I turned around and I said something like, "I've always been down here." And he's like, "No, you haven't. You've always been on the other side." And I said, "You have that whole other field. Why don't you turn around and throw that way?" And then I quickly realized what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "All right, O-line, let's just go to the other side." So we went to the other side.
Yeah.
And I could tell when we were in team, he was frustrated from it. So as soon as we walked in, I walked right up to him and I said, "Hey, I was having a bad practice with the O-line. Stuff wasn't going right. I said something to you that will never happen again. I apologize." And we moved on. And he was like,
"Yeah, that's the right way." Sometimes when things get heated, you got to understand that's something personal. They can get to varying degrees, but it's never personal, and you got to understand that it's out of love. And I think that's important. I mean, as a staff, I try to build relationships with all these guys, and this year I've done a way better job of just getting to know them off the field and doing things off the field with them, so they understand that they care and that you actually love them and want the best for them, and that you're only doing things a certain way for a certain reason. But they have to understand that first. I think that's more important.
Right. Well, I thought it looked bad towards the kids, so I went up to the kids and like apologized, like just
it's about them.
But as soon as I did, they were like, "What are you talking about? That was nothing." Like they didn't even
Yeah.
like.
But you rather be the transparent coach and the coach that does that. I think that's important.
Yeah, but then I just laughed because they were like, "Oh, that's nothing." Like, or some of the kids were like, "We hear worse at home." Like that was like 1% of what we hear at home, and I'm like, "Well, that's true. I did too. It's okay." Like, or like I heard worse in college. Like yeah, I said, you played more ball than me. I walked on for 1 year at Eastern, got my butt kicked, and I said, okay, maybe Division FCS isn't for me. Like I was 6'5", 275, and they said you're too small, man. Like you got to be a tight end, and I'm like, okay. And uh, so I told him I was like, I heard worse in college. I saw a college coach rip up the scholarship in front of a kid's face, and they're just like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. uh, what was I going to say? Now I've lost my train of thought. Oh, you mentioned like you kept your roster.
Yep.
At your level, does that transfer portal, is that the Wild West at your guys' level like everybody sees on TV, or is it kind of mild mannered a little bit?
I wouldn't say it's mild mannered. I wouldn't say it's the wild. I think it's somewhere in between. It's all dependent on where you're at, and what kind of program you want to run. I think that's what you have to decide. Do you want to be a program that um, is going to essentially, I hate the word live in the portal because everybody's going to be in the portal. But if you
Yeah.
want to live off that, some years you're gonna you might hit the 10, 11 wins in a playoff run, and some years you might strike a dud. It just depends.
Yeah.
You never know how those kids come together. But if you're bringing in talent, you got to make sure you have the right culture to do so. Here, we're not essentially going to live in the portal. We're
Yeah.
Division two. I mean, we have the footprint of Oklahoma and DFW,
Mhm.
which is a great area to be able to recruit with the level of football and the level of high school football coaches. And so, let me get that back on. So,
Huh.
so
I
when
have
so
to
when
say,
you- when you're looking at that, you're still going to do the 30 to the 35 high school kids, because I think
yeah.
for development purposes, we're a developmental program. We're going to want to develop you, and grow you and keep kids close to home. And then you look at those certain needs at mid-year, especially O-line and D-line, where depth always matters. A quarterback position, depending on where you're at that year with it, or a defensive back. So there's certain positions that you're never going to turn down. And we're always looking. I think we did 15 at mid-year, which we didn't bring any eye-popping kids that are going to be on these boards of like, oh my gosh, big transfers in Division two. That doesn't matter to me. It matters what they've done in the classroom. Have they had production experience matters. Being in a 4-year culture rather than
Yeah.
in a 2-year culture, because a junior college culture is different than a 4-year culture,
Yeah.
and it does in the weight room. So we did a really good job identifying those kids with the turnaround and getting them in, and they all had productive springs, and they're all going to have production for us in the fall. Right now, it's the this May period and then June period is okay. After spring ball, did any injuries get you behind, or do you think you're not as good as some spots, and so you fill them? But it's no panic. It's none of that. So I wouldn't call it the Wild West or mild matter, but you need to make sure you know what you're doing and you
Right.
have a plan for it and you have your staff on the same page. Like for us, you go in just with the kids in the portal. DFW is a whole nother, like the amount of kids in the portal from the DFW area, we can be fine in there. We don't need to
Right.
be flying kids from California, from the East Coast, from even from Illinois. People are like, why don't you? Because it's
Yeah.
still 12 hours.
Right.
You want to bring kids that are near. So when you can just go in there and still find a portal kid in that 4 to 6 hour range and keep them close to home and bring them back home, that matters to me.
Right.
Because I think that, I've been here for 6 years and I've seen what's worked and what's not worked. And so you can't be naive to some of that stuff.
Do you think being at like a junior college, seeing that recruiting for, even though it was a different world back then, like being at junior college, being at South Dakota, learning how that recruiting works, and like you said, learning areas, did that help then? Because I know you've been there for 5 years. Did that kind of
Mhm.
help get your understanding of how you would attack it in that area, and then just keep adapting to what the world has changed into?
I think so. I think so. It's definitely helped. Because I think if you're never adapting, you're just going to get farther and farther
That's
behind.
true.
I
That's
think
true.
for any school that says, I'm not going to recruit the portal or I'm not going to recruit high school kids, I mean, that's the world we live in. That's the world of college sports. You have to be able to adapt. And if someone takes offense to it, I don't understand that, And so you just got to make sure you form relationships. And it's like anything else. You're gonna obviously gonna take the good character kids, but you're gonna make sure you're taking the kids that can ultimately help you win football games
Right,
and help
right,
them graduate. Or else a lot of us won't have a lot of jobs. And so you kind of got to find that balance every now and then. But yes, we're going to make sure we do the consistent, 30 to 32 kids in high school with the area that we have here, and then find your 10 to 12 a year transfers that can make you better and bring production and good character to your program.
right. Because I have a hard time trusting any media source nowadays, even like the sports. So when they talk about the transfer portal, I'm like, yes, you guys are focusing on the wild part of it.
Yeah, it's the 1%, it's the 2%, and it gets driven by all the other, the instant gratification. It's the guy that's done something that thinks you're going to do something somewhere else quick instead of maybe developing or finding the kids that are just there to play football and have experience in football and to just get a better experience for the right reasons, And so those sometimes things get overshadowed and overlooked. It can be used in the right way, not just
Right.
as a tool of I'm going to get the best player. Sometimes maybe getting a kid like even this alone we brought in a couple kids, even this May and June period, that are from Oklahoma that we recruited last year, the year before, that went to other places that weren't happy. That's not because they had massive production or massive that they just wanted to come back and play for us because of the relationship that we built a
Hmm.
year or 2 years ago. And so
That's
that's important to me. That means we're doing the right thing. And even though we may lose a kid this nowadays, you might see them 2 years down the road. And so you
yep.
never know. And so you always got to keep recruiting them and you always got to keep an open mind. And so that's when you think when those kids come back, that's when you're like, okay, we're doing the right thing. And
Right.
so there's certain ways to play it, and there's certain ways to not play it.
Well, again, going back to like, I'm sorry, I keep bringing up like TV, but that's what people see. They're like,
Yep.
well, how did this school get this kid? And I'm like, okay, reporters, did you do your job? Did that coach recruit that kid 2 years ago
Hmm.
and made it, had to have made an impact for that kid 2 years later or a year later say, you know what? You said the right things to me. What you said made sense. I was 18 years old, 19 years old. It didn't make sense to me. Now I'm a year older and I understand it. Um, like I'm obviously a big Illinois fan. So like Brad Underwood got a kid from Oregon that he recruited 4 years ago.
Yeah.
He went to the portal and went right to Illinois. And they were like, how did he get there so quick? It was tampering. I'm like, no, he recruited the kid 4 years ago. He entered the portal, called Underwood and said, hey, talked to him and got him to go. And
Yeah.
so I like focusing on that. Though I like to know why a kid goes to the portal because it might be homesick. Like you said, a kid from Oklahoma is like, you know what? I want to be back in that area.
Hmm.
What coach made an impact on me? Oh, this university made an impact on me.
There,
Maybe that
there's
was the
more of
right.
those than what people ever talk about, and that's what's disappointing. But it is what it is, and so it's there's plenty of those out there, especially for these smaller schools, from going from FCS to Division 2 or even FCS to FBS.
Well, I try to defend you college coaches because I'm like,
Hmm.
like I always defend college coaches, like because I'm very blessed. This podcast has been going since 2020, and like I've talked to coaches all over the country, and I've talked to every level, and just the amount of more work that gets put on you guys when stuff keeps changing. And I'm tired of hearing people say, "Well, they're making a lot of money to do this." I'm like, no, 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 no. You're just seeing
Hmm.
the top five of the power four
Yeah,
now money. You're not seeing
100%.
you're not seeing those assistant coaches. You're not seeing the group of five FCS Division twos. Like you guys are earning your money. You're working long hours. So I always try to defend college coaches because, like you said, maybe if you're an assistant coach, it's football all day, but you're also doing extra stuff as a head coach. You would love to do football all day. Maybe 2 hours of your day or 3 hours is
Yeah,
football.
that's about it. Some days, other stuff is organizing the team, it's scheduling, it's a lot of stuff that goes into it. That's like that drives you nuts. But if you don't do that, you're never going to be able to chance to get to do football. And if I don't get that stuff done, it helps me also carve out time for relationships and put some events in there that we can do as a team. Because I mean that stuff's important. Like I think last week as a team, we have over 80 kids here this summer. Last week we took them. We took them. We had a Juneteenth celebration, and then this
Mhm.
week coming up, we're taking them to the pool. And
Yeah.
then next week we're doing team. I mean, next month we're doing team bonding skills at the Votech. So you're just doing things and trying to plan things that ultimately aren't football, that are just around the kids. And sometimes, if you're just football all the time, or you're driving crazy with a schedule, you drive kids out. And
Mhm.
so, I got to realize now, football. I can't sit here and just because I'm here all day, I can't have the kids sit here all day.
Right.
And so, I think that's important. Same with my assistant coaches.
Oh yeah, we did. Our head coach did that. He tries to do that. Like I think last year, yeah, it was last year. He brought out a big cooler, and we're like, "What is that?" And he's like, "You'll see." And at the end of the practice, he opens it up, and it's water balloons. And he's like, "All right, guys, have a water balloon fight."
Yeah.
So they're going after each other. Well, then it turned into they said, "Wait a minute, we can get after these coaches." So they start
Coaches and
chasing
go
us.
in.
And like my senior offensive guard, he started since he was a sophomore, and we played some good teams, and he got destroyed. And he's like, "This is for this team. This is for this team,"
Yeah.
like throwing it at me. And I look at the head coach. I'm like, "You son of a!" Like,
Sometimes those are the best moments, and so that's what you kind of do it for, and it sometimes can get lost in the grand scheme of everything else that we focus on some days.
oh yeah, I grabbed the gator and started to drive around. I'm like, "You guys can't catch me!" Start to go, and then like some parents all like, "What the hell is going on?" And we're like, "Oh, we're trying to have fun." Or like, then the next day he brought out watermelons. He goes, "All right, we're gonna have a watermelon
Yeah.
contest." Okay, today we're gonna do whatever. And so he does a really he's figured that out.
Yep.
Egg
I've,
toss.
d- I've done a way better job of that, of just in using people in the community and using people that want to help us, and doing things of that nature, which it just picks up morale, just small victories for our kids.
Oh yeah. And I don't mean to keep sticking on the recruiting thing, but
Mhm.
that's what people keep driving for. I said this a couple years ago. I said I think Division 2 coaches will benefit more from this transfer portal world up in the top schools like FCS and Division 2s. And somebody said why, and I said because Power Fives are still going to recruit high school, but maybe 10 years ago, this kid could have went Power Five or FCS, vice versa. And now Division 2s can swoop in and get them. FCSs can swoop in and get them because those Power Fives now sometimes are going to just plug and play.
Mhm.
And
100%. There's a lot of good high school talent. Um, you see
especially in
more
your
and more down
area.
here. Yeah, I see more and more down here that get the P4s in the group of fives, and then the kids don't ultimately go on because they get a portal kid, or they get a transfer, and so it changes it. And now those kids don't have spots, and as long as you have relationships with the school in the area, sometimes you're getting kids like that where you're like, wow, they don't belong here. And on the flip side of it too, I think it's intriguing and also need to be used to our advantage too. Kids need to make sure they're going somewhere where they can play football and get
Right.
tape, and a lot of those kids don't want to do that. And even if that means they come to a so-called Division 2, or they come to East Central and they ball out here for 2 years, and they're 2 year all conference guys, and they go, coach, I know I can play higher. I'll make those calls for those kids. I don't have a problem with that. I've had those conversations with some kids, but the kids that want to be here and want to play, and as long as they're here, I ask them, you indulge in everything that we're doing, and you're all about it. And we've never had a problem with that. I've never had anybody come here for that and go, but that's the way this college football world is becoming, and you kind of got to become innovative and think out of the box with some of the things that you're doing. And so it's interesting to see what other people are doing. It's interesting to see what works here, but what works here at East Central is just development and bringing in the right kids. And you're going to get some Division 3 kids that excel. You're going to get some NAI kids that excel. And you're going to get some Division 2 kids that excel, that just have experience, that are just moving lateral for a different experience. And that's where we've had success over the last 2 to 3 years here, with kids coming in, and then same is same here with everything going on.
What you described is almost like college football in its purest form that we all kind of miss. Kind
Mm-hmm.
of like nobody. I personally don't fault kids for leaving because they're just going by the rules and everything else. Do I think there should be a rein on it? Yeah, I think that they should be allowed one free leave. They get a second one if the head coach leaves or something like that. But like what you're describing is its purest form. That's why I think some eyes are starting to go. I think more eyes are going Division 2 and FCS the more and more
There's
this.
a lot of there's just so many talented players in Division 2. I
Oh yeah,
mean, just
oh
with
yeah,
just with some of the kids that we have on our team, they're darn good players, and some of the kids we play in this conference, it's impressive to see week to week, and just in the area and the surrounding conferences. There's a lot of really good football, and there's a lot of really good football coaches. I think that's what people lose to. There's a lot of really good, true football coaches in Division 2,
yep.
that develop these kids, and sometimes it gets overlooked, and sometimes a kid gets overlooked for taken for granted for the P4 or the logo above else. But everybody has their own race. Everybody runs their own race. Everybody has their own circumstances, and so you just got to control what you control. But I think it's important to highlight those kids that you have in your program that are doing really well, and just make sure you have relationships with all that stuff, because everything's ever changing, and just making sure you're having fun with what you're doing, but also put in the work.
Last recruiting question, I swear. In
Yeah.
Texas, like you said, your area, I know there's a lot of high schools in Texas. I know there's a lot of colleges in that area.
Mhm.
Is it more difficult when you have that going on, or does it?
No, I don't think so. You just got to make sure you have a grasp on what areas have worked here for you, what areas you have connections with, and what areas you need to make sure you strengthen. You have to strengthen if so. And we have some areas that we know we can go to. We have some coaches that we know we can go to. But at the end of the day, it's so Texas is massive, and so
Mhm.
every day it's like, okay, we evaluated this kid, but then another kid pops up. And so you just always got to make sure you stay in recruiting, just doing your job, just evaluating. And we do a good job as a staff of having two camps. So we have one in the Dallas area and have one in Fort
Mhm.
Worth area. And so that will draw just 500 kids alone with those two camps of being able to get eyes and get our brand and get us down there in the summertime outside of just the recruiting trail. And so that's important to us too, and leaving that mark down there for us. But no, it's fun. And you just got to make sure you also set boundaries, because you don't want to go outside of your limits. I don't mean limits of that nature, but you don't want to stretch the resource that you have,
Yeah,
or just put massive amounts of time on my staff just watching tape from kids all over. So if you don't kind of wrangle it in and have your areas, or have your areas that work, you can down a rabbit hole real fast, and that's
right,
not bad. But it's also knowing where we are and what we need to do and what helps us here specifically at East Central.
right. Do you miss the snow from the Illinois weather?
No, but I would at times love to see how some of these kids would react if they had a practice in it from October to December. I do, because sometimes in the spring it's not cold, but it gets a little chilly, and it rains. But it's fun to see some of these kids react and play. But I was like, hey, if we could play some cold weather games, it'd be a different story. But no, I don't miss it. I think this week we're going to be in the hundreds. I think every week, so
Oh,
we're gonna get some heat. But our kids got their optional voluntary workouts all in the morning, so we don't do anything in the afternoon, so they can get to work and stuff. But
man,
this week will be hot.
it was like 93 or 4 last week, and I was the coach complaining. I'm like, it's too hot. I'm sweating. It's hot. I'm like, I miss it when it was 65, and all the coaches look at me and they're like, "You're crazy! Like, this is awesome. I'd rather be this." And I'm like, "Well, I'm the old line coach. I want to be 65."
Yeah, you won't be cool.
Because I have a friend that I grew up with. His mom lives in Beaumont, Texas, I think.
Yep. Yep.
They own a company that cleans the oil barrels, so they do pretty well for themselves.
Yeah.
He visited down there one spring break in college, met a girl, came back up. He goes, "I think I'm going to move down to Texas." Went down to Texas, and his now wife had never seen snow, so he would come back to Illinois and always try to bring her in like November, but it was always that time in Illinois where it didn't snow. Like
Yeah.
it's Thanksgiving and it's 70 degrees outside. Those
Yeah.
type of things. And so she never saw snow. And when she said that, we all made fun of her. We're like, "What are you talking about? You've never seen snow?" And she goes, "We don't see snow." And the first time she saw was when they visited Colorado. Was like the first
Yeah.
time.
Since I've been here, I think I've seen that maybe no more than 10 times in about 6-7 years. So people are a little different here when it starts to get icy and snow. But it's funny when you go to different parts of the country. But I enjoy it here now. It's been good.
Yeah, you just tell the kids like, "Yeah, back when I was in high school or when I was in college,
You had to play in some weather. Yeah.
you had to play in some weather, or it
Yeah.
was sleeting, or it was like, hey, today it was 40 degrees, then the next day it was
Yep.
70."
Yep. You get some of that here in Oklahoma. It's sometimes unpredictable, but it's still a nice area.
I always It's always interesting to hear people that I'm friends with a high school coach down there. He's coached all over Texas. They moved up to the Panhandle area, and he said it snows there. Like,
Yeah, that's different there in the Panhandle. It's drastically different. It's windier, and you truly get some weather there.
all right, back to football. I just wanted to
Yeah.
ask that question. So you've been a defensive guy your whole coaching career, it seems like. Then you become the head coach. You were talking about now you have to be part of offense. do you put your fingerprints all over it, or do you just kind of let your offensive guys do their thing? You just make sure that you're on the same page with them, or like, do you make the fourth down decisions, or you just kind of trust them to do their thing because you've been a defensive minded guy?
No, when it comes to the game decisions, those will be made as you're going through a drive or as dictating off the game. So I'll make those decisions, but I'll always make sure to let them know, like, hey, as we get near second down, okay, if you can get to their third, you got 2 downs. I try to be good on that. I try to be a little bit aggressive as long as you get towards the minus 45 where you get to near midfield. Some of those change. I mean, Division two, if someone says you're an analytic guy, tell me you got a guy on the sidelines with a book. You're nuts. You're one. You got a lot of resources, and so we don't have that. So it's kind of the flow of the game, and just being old fashioned, and just kind of, hey, how you playing? What's the course of the game, and all that sort of stuff. And so you let that stuff kind of dictate itself and how your team's playing. But through the course of a week, and especially this year, not change my philosophy, but been more of, okay, this is what we would like to see. This is what I would like to see. This would like for us to be, just with seeing what it takes to be successful offensively in this conference, kind of taking pieces of that for which each year, and going into, okay, we got to see a little bit of this, but we also have to be prepared for this and be able to do this. So it's kind of like me giving my defensive look at it, and also my head coach holistic look at it, saying, okay, we still got to be 11. You still got to make sure you're able to run the football, have an effective run game, and get the ball out. And against certain teams, we got to be able to do this. So it's that, and bringing that experience, but then also trying to bring a sense of structure, and just communication of setting what my expectation is, so they know. I mean, at times last year I didn't do a great job of that in the off season of, hey, this is what I would like. Now it's okay. They know what I like. They know what I expect. They know what it needs to look like. They know the expectation. The kids know the expectation. So that's a lot better. That was a learning curve in itself. You sometimes think, okay, roll the ball out there, the offense will be fine. No, it's different. And so I had to learn that. And so the offensive staff is phenomenal this year in the way they've done things. And one, their relationship with each other is second to none, since I think we've got everybody here since November. The way they meet, the way they have constructive things. And sometimes I sit in those meetings and staff meetings and never say a word. And sometimes I sit in there and I say the most. So it just depends on the kind of the day and what they're talking about. And if I don't know what they're talking about, I'll ask questions. And if which is not a ton, but sometimes I just put my own thing in there. But I don't want to make it my offense. It's our offense. So it's all those types of things of, okay, what works, what doesn't work. Same thing I do defensively. It's not just me sitting here going, hey, this is what we're going to do. We got coaches for a reason. We got some really damn good coaches. And so you got to use them as help, and you got to empower them and let them lead the charge at times, because ultimately that's how you're going to win. I mean, them and the kids. And so I think you got to make that known. But no, I've become way better with that, of managing my time, being in those offensive meetings now, when I'm not doing things, and just being involved in even unit meetings as an offense around the kids more too, which I've always done a good job of that, but being in more so of those. So I think that's important. That's a good question.
Well, I always like when a coach has always been one side of the ball their whole life, and then they become a head coach. But I also like that because then, like, you could tell your offensive guys, like, when you're watching a defense, like, really telling them, hey, maybe this is what they're trying to do from the way I would do it. And then they go, oh, okay. And then you can start to do that, because our head coach is like a defensive guy. So that kind of happens too, where like me and the OC sometimes will be like, hey, look at what they're doing. Like, what do you think they're trying to do? Why would they try to do this? We're trying to find out the why, and then how do we battle that? Now, our head coach is real simple. He'll walk in and tell us, he goes, but you see, these two guys are their weakest guys. Why don't you go after them? And then he does it vice versa for defense. He goes, hey, this kid is their weakest kid. Why are we looking at him? We should be looking at this kid. He's super simple that way. He's like, why don't you just do that? And we're like, oh, that's true. Why are we making it so complicated?
I'm with you. That's how I am kind of defensively. And that's with in some meetings. Sometimes offensively, it's like, okay, let's just worry about X, Y, and never get to Z, and just let that take care of itself. And so it's kind of those type of things where defensively, I just revert back to the fundamentals. We don't sacrifice the fundamentals on defense, and that's something that we talk about and live by.
Right. Sometimes I ask good questions. I'm not a dumb country boy from Central Illinois. I always tell people that I'm like, I'm no English major, I'm no journalist major. So they're like, why do you have a podcast? And I'm like, well, I just like to talk ball, man. I don't know what to tell you. I'm like, I was a sports management major. I know nothing. Or as a PE teacher and sports manager. I'm like, I know nothing, man. I know nothing. Well, Coach, I've taken a lot of your morning. I know you got meetings and stuff to do. I want to give you time to go get ready for that, but I appreciate you coming on here. An Illinois kid out in Texas, Oklahoma, making it work.
I appreciate you having me on here today. It's I'm more than happy to come back. I appreciate you doing this and giving coaches a platform to speak and just to learn from each other. There's been some good coaches on here as I took a look back, and so hopefully I was able to speak on something that either helps somebody or just kind of give my story in the end. So I appreciate that.
Oh, you did. And sometimes I forget how many I've had on that you said that. I look back and I go, oh my God.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a quick fun story because it started in February of 2020. It wasn't supposed to be this. I wanted it to be like Pat McAfee type style. I was like, that'd be real fun to do, And then COVID hit. So what happened? Well, there was nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
A high school coach in West Virginia sends me a message on Twitter saying, hey, I'm bored. How did you start your podcast? And I said, okay, this is how I did it. It's free. Do whatever. So I hopped on his just because he was bored. And then I don't know if you've ever seen his. Then Coach Banstra, he's in Ohio. He has a podcast on YouTube. He does clinics. He was on there too. All of a sudden, he starts one. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then they started to get coaches on. I said, wait a minute, I'm going to get coaches on. And it became like a friendly competition.
Yeah.
We'd text each other like, oh, this coach is really cool. He would talk to you. This coach is really cool. And it became a competition. I think I did 6 or 7 in one day. I was just boom, 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 boom. And then I did like 15 or 20 in 1 week, like during COVID. And then I look back and I'm like, I've had a lot of people on here. But what's awesome is you guys just say yes. Like, you're just like, yeah. And I'm like, every coach I treat big time. But college coaches, for you guys to say yes is such a blessing because you're so busy. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a nobody high school coach in Illinois. And these college coaches are like, yeah, sure. And it's just a blessing.
No, and I appreciate you saying that, but it's fun. I mean, at the end of the day, when you talk about football and just talk about my journey or just anything about life and just helping these kids and just kind of leading people that sometimes it's not the X's and O's, it's about everything else, because that's 85% of what we're doing. You play 11 games for 11 days, and then the other 300 whatever, you're doing academics, you're talking with them, you're helping them through life,
you're a therapist,
you're
man.
getting through situations. And so it's a unique sport that we play, and it's the best sport in the world. And I think it's something that people need to understand, that it's not just the 11 Saturdays or 12 Saturdays they play. There's a lot of other things that go into it, and that's what makes a coach unique, and that's what makes a player, a student athlete, very unique these days.
Oh yeah. Well, Coach, again, I appreciate you.
Appreciate you.